So I'm sure you've heard about the $418 million settlement that the National Association of Realtors agreed to. Now, how is this going to affect you as a consumer? How is it going to affect the real estate market? Is it going to make it cheaper to buy and sell a home? Is it going to bring down home prices? That's a lot of the headlines out there. And then there's a lot of headlines about 6% commissions and all the commissions that greedy realtors do make and all that. But I'm going to go over just the basics of it. I'm going to give you three parts of this that I think will have an effect on the market. I'll let you know what I think. Will it make it more expensive or cheaper to buy and sell real estate? And I'm going to do that right now. So my name is Sean McManaman. I've been in the real estate mortgage business for 24 years, mortgages the whole time. I did real estate for about 10 years, so I've seen it from both sides. I've seen it from the real estate side. I've seen it from the mortgage side. I no longer do buy and sell real estate. I'm totally mortgages. So I get to see it from the buyer standpoint a lot. I get to see the struggle buyers are having right now with the home prices. So will this help? Is this going to help? So let's get into it. So number one, the first part of this I want to talk about is that the seller, which before the settlement, the seller would be responsible for both sides of the commission by the listing agent and the buyer's agent. Now, there were never any requirements for this. Okay, that was another misconception that sellers had to do this. No, the sellers didn't have to do this. It's always been a negotiation. But for the most part, the sellers pay both sides of the commission. And the settlement is stating that the sellers no longer have to do this. Okay. Sellers never had to do it to begin with, but they're really thinking that the sellers had to do this. But the sellers no longer have to do this. So the sellers probably won't be doing this into the future. So the way it worked now is that you are ready to sell your home. You have a meeting with your listing agent. The listing agent comes in and they do comps to see what your home is worth. And then you agree on a commission and you move forward. So the way this is going to work now, the same way for the most part, is that the listing agent will do comps. Let's say in this case it's $500,000. Your home's worth $500,000. Okay. The listing agent comes in, he shows you the comps, or she shows you the comps, and your home is worth $500,000 on the market. So you agree to put it on the market for $500,000. The next negotiation is how much commission are you going to make? Before, you were probably going to be thinking you're going to pay 5 or 6%. For the most part, it's 5% because you're doing both sides. Well, now you're only responsible for the listing agent. So you agree to 2%. Okay. I'm not saying that's the way it's going to work, but let's say for this video, this is what we come up with. 2%, that's $10,000. But you as a seller, you're saying, I'm not going to give any to the buyer's agent. Okay. So 10,000 is the most out of my pocket. We're going to put it on the market for $500,000. So what has really changed? The only thing that changes is that the seller now will put more money in their pocket. Well, that's great, right? I mean, I agree. I mean, that's good for sellers. But guess what? It has no effect on home prices. If your home is worth $500,000, you're going to sell it for $500,000. Do you honestly think sellers, out of the goodness of their hearts, are going to drop the price a little bit to make it easier for people to buy? No, they're going to put more money in their pocket. It is not going to drop home prices in any way. I don't know why they think that that's going to happen, but in my opinion, that's not going to happen. Now let's go on to the buyer side. Okay. The buyer is out and they're saying, I want to look at $500,000 homes. Okay. So your home comes up, this $500,000 home comes up, and the buyer's agent is going to show this home to their buyer. Now, before the settlement, the buyer's agent would look in MLS and they see that they're going to make 2.5% on this, or 2%, whatever. Okay, so I know I'm going to make at least $10,000, but you have a split with the company you work for. You don't keep it all, but you know that's going to be the total commission, right? So you bring them out, show them the house, and they like it, and you put in an offer. So what's changing is that as a buyer's agent now, you have to negotiate with your buyer as to how much you are going to charge for your service, okay, for you being the buyer's agent. So in this case, let's say you agree on 1%. I'm not saying that's what it's going to be, but let's just say it's only 1. So that's $5,000. Before the settlement, the buyer had to come to closing. Once they close, they had to come to closing with their down payment, their closing costs, prepaids, and escrows. Okay. Usually, let's say the down payment was 5%, and then closing costs, prepaids, and escrows were another 3%. So that's 8%, right? Total out of their pocket. Now the buyer is going to have to pay the buyer's agent the 1%. So they're going to have to pay their down payment, closing costs, prepaids, and escrows, and another 1%. So it's more expensive for buyers to purchase after the settlement. And that's the way it's going to be. More expensive. It will not be less expensive. The buyer will now have to come to closing with more money. So in what world is this cheaper? In what world is this more affordable? It's not. So, I'm doing mortgages for buyers every day. I see buyers struggling right now to afford down payment closing costs by itself. Okay. With the prices right now, you're going to throw on more money on the buyer. It's going to make it more expensive. It's not going to help the real estate market. So, I mean, people will say, well, the buyer should have been paying all along. Well, now it's going to be a lot more expensive. It's probably going to drive a lot of buyers out of the market because they're not going to be able to afford it. You cannot roll in the closing costs into the mortgage when you're purchasing. Okay. That's out of pocket at closing. You can't roll it in now. Will they make that change maybe for lending? Maybe in the future, but they're not now. For you veterans and active duty military, what are you going to do? Because VA prohibits the buyer from paying real estate commission. That's going to have to change, right? Will that change? We don't know. Okay, so as a buyer, you can still ask the seller to pay for your closing costs. That's no different after the settlement. You could do it before the settlement, you can do it after the settlement. But in today's real estate market, that's not happening as much. Sellers aren't paying closing costs, prepays, and escrows as much as they were in the past. Now, with interest rates higher, they are doing it right now, but in the future, as rates go down, that's not going to happen. So you're going to have to ask the seller to pay your closing costs, or you're going to have to pay your buyer's agent extra money. You're going to have to come to closing with more money. In my opinion, this is not going to be good for the real estate market. Okay, for the third part of this settlement, that is now, before the settlement, you could use whatever buyer's agent you wanted to. If you wanted to use one buyer's agent to show you this house and one buyer's agent to show you that house, you're a free agent as a buyer, basically. Okay. I didn't like it. I didn't think it's right, but that's the way it is, right? So now with the settlement, you will no longer be a free agent. You will have to sign what's called a buyer's brokerage agreement. That's an agreement between you as the buyer and the buyer's agent. And there's a time frame in this agreement. So in the next, let's say 6 months, if you buy a house, you're paying that buyer's agent whatever you agree on, 1%, 2%, whatever. Let's say he starts showing, or she starts showing you homes, and you're like, I don't really like this person. Now, they're a pain. I don't like the way they work. They're not going out of their way to help me. Too bad. You've already entered into an agreement. You have to use that person. Before, you could say, all right, forget it. You're out. I'm going to go find another agent. Now you can't. You're not a free agent anymore. You have to use it. And if you buy any home anywhere in the 6 months that agreement's good for, you got to pay that agent. And if you don't, they can sue you to make sure you pay them. So that's going to put handcuffs on the buyers again. Now, for agents, that's not terrible, because now buyers agents can, at least they know they're in an agreement with the buyer, so that buyer can't walk away. So that could make the agents relax a little bit, right? Who knows? Professional agents never did this, and professional agents never had a problem with this. What this does is, the agents that aren't so good, if they enter into an agreement with the buyer, they got the buyer. The buyer can't go anywhere. So I think it's just too much handcuffs onto the buyer for this, but it may help. Who knows? We'll have to see. Okay, for the next part of this that I think is actually halfway decent is that the settlement states that you can no longer put the commissions in MLS. So buyers agents can't go on MLS and see what they're going to make commission on the sale of this home. Now, there were some agents out there, the ones that are not very good or not professional, that would actually look at commission and maybe weed out some properties based on commission. I would say the majority of agents don't do that. When I was showing homes, I didn't even look at the commission. I mean, I would look at it after, but if it matched what my buyers wanted, I showed them the house. And most agents, professional agents, do that. But the ones that weren't professional that would actually do that, they're going to have a problem now because you won't be able to see how much commission that is being paid. Now, remember, the seller doesn't have to pay anything, but there will be no commission in there whatsoever on MLS. That could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing. You're going to have to pay your buyer's agent directly. So really that shouldn't have a big effect, but that's one of the other changes and the one that I really think could help the real estate market. Okay, so all in all, the settlement, for the agents that are established and professional and they take their job seriously, this isn't going to have a huge effect on agents like that. Okay. You're going to see these headlines, which are ridiculous. This saying, I can't get that right. This saying you want to pay a buyer's agent commission. Yes, you will, unless you're doing it on your own. And if you go to the listing agent and you think you're going to get a better deal on the home, that's wrong. That's not even the way it is now. Let me show you another headline here. 6% on buying or selling homes gone. It was never there, folks. There was never a 6% mandate on this. There was nobody out there saying you had to charge 6%. And for the last 10 years, I can promise you 6% was rare. It was mostly 5%, 4 to 5.5% is what commissions were for the past 10 years. I mean, with the internet and everything, technology coming into real estate, that 6% was gone. Okay. That was way back in the day when people got 6% or more. Let me show you another one. Realtor settlement could bring a seismic shift in the housing market. Yeah, it might. It's going to make it more expensive for buyers. The NAR settlement could slash home prices for many Americans. I just showed you that that's not going to happen. Sellers are not going to sell their home for less money than what it's worth. It's not going to slash prices. It's going to make it more expensive for buyers. I believe, my opinion, okay, you put in whatever you think. My opinion is this. It made the lawyers very rich. Okay, these class action suits like this, they're not for the good of the consumer. I don't want to hear that because that's absolutely not true. It is for the good of the lawyers who don't have any regulations on their fees. And look, I like lawyers. I love lawyers because my son's a lawyer. I love him, obviously. My daughter's going to be a lawyer. I got 2 lawyers now. I love them both dearly. But these class action suits they don't help consumers. And I guarantee the sellers that are involved in this suit, they're not going to make a lot of money. So all in all, I don't necessarily think that the settlement's going to help the real estate market. It's going to make it more expensive for buyers. It will put more money in the seller's pocket. That is true. Yes, it will. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd be really happy to see what people say. Say whatever you want, debate me. I don't care if you think I'm totally crazy, maybe I am, who knows? And I've been in this business for long enough where maybe, my thought process is a little skewed. Who knows? Go ahead and tell me what you think. Have a great day. Hopefully you found this helpful. Thank you very much.